Hey guys, my name is Grant. I just want to make a quick video talking about what, in my opinion, what the best way is to pick your hero in ranked all pick. If you're just logging onto Dota to play a couple games and just chill out, I wouldn't really focus on any of this, just pick what you have fun with and enjoy the game. But for everybody who is looking to gain MMR and basically just plays ranked to win, you really should be looking more at drafting. I think it's one of the most overlooked things in the game, what hero you actually choose to pick at the start of the game. I remember a couple years ago when there was that thing added to the compendium where the game would prompt everybody every day with one set of teams. It would show you what the Radiant picked and what the Dire picked, and everybody would vote on what team they thought won based on just looking at the lineups. And I remember being pretty much horrible at it. I think I ended it with about a 50% correct prediction rating at the end at most, which is pretty bad, just worse than flipping a coin. But I know every day on Reddit they would do it also. And on there, I think everybody was about 80% of the people every day would get the prediction right. And this wasn't only looking at Immortal games, it was looking at every bracket. It would tell you what bracket it was, so some days you would get a Herald game, and still 80% of people would be able to predict the game correctly. And why is that? Why are people able to just look at a game and guess who won with pretty accurate results? Well, I think the only thing to draw from that is hero picks do matter, and they matter quite a lot. And the weirdest thing about this is I don't think higher MMR players are necessarily that much better at drafting than lower MMR players are. If you took an Ancient player and an Archon player and just put them side by side, looked at their gameplay, I think most people are going to be able to tell which is which. But if you looked at their drafting phase and just saw what they pick in different situations, I don't think anybody would be able to tell the difference. With that being said, I think the different brackets of players based on your rank probably should focus on different things when you're picking your heroes. And that's why I'm going to break this video down into about 4 separate sections. The first 3 of these sections are going to be just broken down by what MMR you're at. My advice for what a Herald player should pick is going to be different from what I think a Legend player should pick. And even that is going to be different than what I think a Divine player should pick. Now, I'm not just going to break down 50 different lineups and say what character is best for each niche situation. I more so want to give everybody some guidelines and just some things to think about when you're picking to make a bit of a more informed decision. I know almost everybody watching this video, including me, normally just loads into a game, waits till there's about 2 seconds left and you're supposed to pick. Here's the gold start ticking away, and then just kind of panic pick something. So I'm just going to break down a couple key things to think about at each of these brackets to try to make that quick decision a little bit more informed. So those are going to be the first 3 sections, and then the 4th section is more so going to be looking at the higher ranks and breaking that down a little bit further based on if you're going to be picking first phase, second phase, or third phase. Now the first thing we're going to look at is what I donned as the lower ranks, Herald and Guardian. Now I'm not saying the people of these brackets are the same skill or anything. I just think the advice that I'd give to both of them is similar enough where I could just cover it both in one. And the main advice that I'd give to these brackets is actually not to worry about what anybody else in the game is drafting, just to pick stuff that you are comfortable with. I think the key to get out of this bracket is by getting some fundamentals of Dota down. And I think it's harder to get fundamentals of Dota down when every game you are kind of having to think about your hero more than you have to. And by that I mean, if you're picking a new hero and maybe you're not comfortable with their spells or what the build is, that's going to be taking a lot of your brain power away from actually figuring out what you should do in the game. So my biggest advice here would actually just to be focusing on a pretty small group of heroes that you enjoy playing. I'm not saying just spam one hero, but maybe narrow it down to about 5 or 6 and really learn what the builds are, learn what your skill builds are, and just kind of how the hero functions, so that after you play 10 or so games with all of them in a row, you'll really be able to play them without thinking about them nearly as much. And that'll open you up to be able to think about the game way more, and I think that'll naturally raise your MMR over time. As far as picking heroes for this small hero pool, I wouldn't just focus on what's being played at majors or in the higher MMR brackets. I think those heroes are usually picked there because they're not as exploitable or very powerful right now, but the people that you're playing against in these brackets aren't going to know how to exploit heroes pretty much at all, and you're not going to know how to take advantage fully of a hero anyway. So I think the small differences in meta between patches is definitely the least here, which is why I'm just saying pick heroes that you enjoy, add those to your hero pool, and just focus on playing those. Even if you're doing something off meta, if you really like playing Necrophos mid and one game you have to play 4 or 3, you can still play Necro there. It's not going to be great once you raise your MMR higher, but for now I think just playing consistently, playing consistent heroes is going to be your best bet. So I got to take a second here to talk about the Wraith Kings and the Spectres. These are heroes that have always had incredibly high win rates in pubs, especially in these lower brackets. No matter how good the hero actually is, they just do great in lower MMR pubs. And pretty much the main reason for them doing well always is because they're heroes whose kits naturally make up for a mistake that a lot of people make. A hero like Wraith King, no matter what, if you're out of position, you get a bailout because of your ultimate, just come back to life and try again. Spectre, if you're farming in a horrible spot on the map, you can just click your R, get right into the team fight. If you're looking to improve at the game overall and are really looking to push rank, I would actually suggest avoiding these heroes. If you're just looking to win one game, sure, it might be good, and they might make up for some of the flaws you have. If you play 50 games in a row on Spectre, and even if you win all of them and get all that MMR, as soon as you pick a different hero, like you play Terrorblade, you're still going to make the same mistakes that you're making on Spectre. But this time you're not going to get bailed out. I think relying on heroes like Spectre, like Wraith King, are going to make you almost worse at the game overall, even if you might see short-turn games in MMR. That's another reason why I suggest picking a small hero pool instead of just spamming one hero. I see a lot of people suggesting low MMR people just spam one hero, just pick a hero that dominates pubs and play it, and I'll say that's might be your best bet for increasing one rank, getting 500, 700 MMR, but anything past that, you're just going to lose it all again and have to still relearn all this stuff. So save yourself some time. Don't give yourself training wheels just to have them ripped off. Pick some heroes you enjoy playing, play them a bunch, get real used to them, and really just focus on getting better at your fundamentals, not learning a new hero every game. All right, now we're looking at the average of where most ranked Dota players are going to fall. I know a good amount of people on my friends list who fall in this range, so I've had a lot of opportunities to check their match histories, see some glaring issues that pop out. And there's one issue that I see pop up in 80% of these people's games, and that is extremely high versatility. And now I'm not going to make the same suggestion that I did for the lower MMRs, where you should just stick to a certain hero pool. I'm saying that you really need to avoid the situation where 1 out of every 5 games, you put yourself in a horrible spot by picking a hero you're really not comfortable with. If you're in these brackets and you want to try out and play a new hero, let's say you're a mid player and you're not super comfortable with Storm, if you see a good Storm game, don't just pick it out of the blue, play it, maybe win, maybe lose, and then not play it again for another 15 games and then pick it up again. Heroes like that need more time. I'd say actually every hero needs more time for you to get used to it and play it effectively. So if you're sitting there and you want to play Storm Spirit, just pick it 10 games in a row. Or for the next 20 games, have 10 games out of it be Storm Spirit. Really focus on learning the hero before you just one-off pick it. These random one-off picks for heroes that really need time to learn and master are what are just going to bleed you MMR. And the second thing I want to bring attention to for this bracket is please do not spend too much focus on what people in high MMRs are picking, what pro teams are picking, what high MMR streamers are picking. You still at this bracket can get away with playing pretty much anything if you're confident with it. It's not until you get to maybe higher legend, but then ancient, divine, immortal. At those brackets, you need to focus more on what's actually good in the meta right now. Whereas if you're an Archon 3 player, playing something you're better at is going to be far better for you than picking something that's just doing well in Ancient right now. This goes back to the not picking one-off things. If you're an offlane player and you see it right now that Broodmother's getting really popular, but you're not a Broodmother player, you have 2 options. I would say either don't pick Broodmother, or for something that you do want to learn, even if it's just because it's good right now, spend 15 games, 20 games playing it pretty much in a row until you're confident with it. And then you can add it, and then you can pick it randomly. But until you practice it, don't just pick something because it's meta. All right, now we're into the higher MMRs. This is really where I think we need to focus in the drafting phase, not just think of something we want to play beforehand that we're confident with going in and picking. That's not really going to cut it anymore. At these brackets, we need to be more adaptive when we're picking around what enemies pick and picking around what teammates pick. Now, for those, I can't give any great just overall rules because it's going to be very different if you're picking a support first pick versus your mid last pick. And because of that, the rest of this video is going to be focused at going through each of those phases, whether your first phase picking a position 5 or 4, second phase picking usually your offlane and then either your carry or mid, and then third phase, which about 50% of the time will be your mid, 25% of the time will be your carry, and then 25% of the time your position 5 who's still just been AFK the whole time. Okay, we're going to start with first phase picking, which 99% of the time should be your positions 5 and 4. So this one's a bit tricky. How do you know what to play when you're going in? You see none of the enemy team's picks. You're not going to see any of your picks. Best case, you have somebody hovering over a hero for their carry, offlane, or mid, but most of the time they're not going to end up picking that anyway unless they're already pretty set on it. So pretty much no information. What are you going to do? Somebody's just going to have to bite the bullet, pick with no info, just pick something they want to play that they're good at. Then it's the job of the other person to play off that. So it's the job of whoever picks second to try to pick something that complements the other support and that will kind of fill its weaknesses in. So the first little check that I'll always do if I'm picking one of these positions is if the other person picks a support that doesn't have a stun, I'm always going to pick something with a stun. It gets really awkward if you start a game and both of your supports pick no stuns, because then everybody else in the game feels kind of pressured to pick something with a stun, and that really limits the core positions, especially mid and carry, because there's not nearly as many carries and mids with stuns as there is 3, 4, or 5. So that's the first thing I mean by picking a complementary support. The second big one would be try to look at the other hero, see if they're strong in lane or not. If you're position 4, pick something like Earthshaker or another pretty weak laner. Last thing you want to do is also pick a weak laning hero, because then you're just kind of setting yourself up to have a really hard time in at least 2 of your lanes. That's just going to set your game off to a horrible early game, which is going to leave a lot of room to make up in the mid game. Now, these heroes aren't fundamentally bad, of course. The reason they're bad in early game is because they're going to probably pick it up in the mid game after they get a couple items. but you want to make sure that both of your heroes aren't looking to hit the same timing, where you're just way too weak and both of your timings are just going to be delayed. Now really the only other option you have is if your position 3 or your position 1 hero are hovering over something. So in my experience in mid and in carry role, the people that hover heroes early, a lot of the times are going to swap it up and pick something different, but in my experience, people who hover a position 3 early, a lot of the time end up actually picking that hero. So if your lane partner's hovering something and you are comfortable with a hero that combos well with it, that's always a good place to start too. So we're going to move to second phase now, where there's a lot more to think about. You have a lot more options because you have more information to go off of. So we're going to start by looking at position 3. And if I'm playing position 3, the first thing I really think about is, did my supports kind of follow the rules that I have for myself when picking up support? If you look at both of your supports and your supports are Dazzle and Oracle, then nope, neither of them have a stun, and that's something that you pretty heavily have to address. In a case like that, maybe you want to pick a hero like Earthshaker, where you have stuns to spare to try to make up for the lack of stuns that your team has so far. But if your team does have a couple stuns, then maybe it's not something that you have to pick, but something that you may still want to add. After that, you kind of want to look at who you're going to be laning with. So is your position 4 a bad laning hero? Are they really strong early on? You kind of want to decide what the strengths of the hero that you're playing with are and complement that. If your 4 picks something like Tusk or Earth Spirit, that's going to want to get active and get kills early in lane. Don't pick something super passive that sits back and has nothing to offer. Pick something high tempo that can get kills with them. On the flip side, if your 4 picks something very passive and you end up picking something really aggressive, you guys are going to be at odds with each other the entire game. One of them's going to want to be going in, the other isn't, and your lane's probably just not going to work out all that well. And the other thing we have to look at is what 5 you think you're going to be laning against. And the main thing we want to do here is just make sure that we don't pick ourselves into a big counter. For example, if you see the other team picking position 5 Grimstroke, just don't pick something like Pangolier where you're just giving yourself a hard counter when you don't have to. But I'd always primarily suggest thinking and complementing your own team instead of worrying about what the other team picks. So I'm actually going to combine carry and mid here into what I'll say third phases. Even if you are playing carry and you're going to second phase pick, you usually still want to wait and see what your offlaner is going to pick because you want the more information. If you do actually get last pick, you will be able to see more enemies and you'll be able to avoid countering yourself a bit more. But like I said, I'm more so worried about what my team picks and complementing to make sure our team is strong rather than picking something to try to counter a random hero on the enemy team. So again, first things we want to think about are making sure that we have stuns. It's something I'm going to harp on the entire time. It is probably the number one thing that makes game hard versus easy is the amount of stuns you have. I'm not saying a team with 30 stuns is going to beat a team with 20 stuns, but a team with 5 stuns is almost always going to beat a team with 0 stuns. A thing specific about carry that doesn't really apply to mid is, just like off lane, we want to look at what hero we're going to be laning with and pick something that complements them. If you're a position 5 Winter Wyvern, we don't want to pick a Drow Ranger because both of us are just going to sit back and get hit a bunch. But if we have a hero like Ogre on our team, we might be more likely to pick a Drow because then we actually have somebody to sit in the front lines and kind of take the heat off us during lane. Pretty much everything I've talked about for first and second phase has been really focused on laning stage and how to just get out of the early game doing well. I really think it's the job of these last 2 picks that you have in your team to fill out the issues that are going to come up later because of the hero picks you have now. The way that we're going to do that is by having a really easy mental checklist that we can just go down and make sure that we have a lot of these boxes checked. The first thing and most critical thing that I think we should look at is somebody to farm lanes. If you don't have anybody on your team who's able to aggressively push lanes and show on the map, then you're going to run into a lot of problems. And this job is always going to fall to one of your cores, but ideally you want either a carry or a mid laner that can do this. If you don't have somebody that can sit in the off lane, shove it in safely, then the enemy team's not going to have anything to respond to, and they can just hunt your map freely. So for carry position, there's going to be a hero like Anti-Major Weaver who can farm the lane really fast, as well as having decent escape so they don't just get killed as soon as they show up. And then for mid lane, it's going to be the same thing. A hero like Queen of Pain, Puck, any of the spirits who can quickly shove out a wave and get back to safety. The other reason this is important, and the reason why I kind of have this at the top of the list, the first thing that I think you should think about, is if you end up with a team where you have a sniper mid and a Medusa carry, if either of these heroes show up to do this, they're just going to die. They're going to get ganked right away. So both of them have to sit back in the jungle, and they're just going to be competing with each other's farm the entire time. Where if you have a hero like Ember Spirit, they're going to be able to take that lane farm and leave all this open room for the Medusa to hit jungle creeps. Next thing on my list is going to be initiation. I know all of us have played games where we have no form of initiation. We just kind of have to sit there and wait for the other team to initiate on us. And sometimes we have heroes that are good with that, but it's almost always bad to start fights off like that on the back foot. So we want to make sure we have some kind of initiation, some kind of blink hero, some kind of instant stun, anything like that. The next thing I'm putting up on my list is somebody that's able to team fight. And a lot of the time this does just kind of fall on the offlaner. Heroes like Tidehunter, 3 Enigma, Sand King, Centaur, Slardar, they have AoE stuns, they build blink daggers, they initiate, and they will give you some kind of team fight potential. Now if your position 3 doesn't pick anything like that, then it's kind of important that one of these picks does that. You don't want to have no team fight potential and then pick carry Nature's Prophet, because usually you're going to be doubling down on something your team has a lot of, and you're not really making up for anything that you're lacking. The next thing we're going to talk about is having some kind of frontliner. This is kind of in the trio with initiating, team fight, and now frontlining. Usually you'll have a hero that can kind of tick all of these boxes at once, but sometimes you won't, and it's kind of something important to have. The main reason why I think you need a frontliner in this game is because you can't have everybody in the backline. It's just impossible. The fight will happen and be focused on the farthest person you have up, almost always. So if your team is all ranged heroes that do damage at afar and want to stay at a safe distance, suddenly those backline heroes are going to become the frontline heroes. So like I said, a lot of the time, a hero is going to be able to tick all these boxes. If you have a position 3 Tide Hunter, he's going to build a Blink Dagger, he's going to be able to be your initiator, your main team fight focus, and your frontliner. So our next focus is going to be looking to make sure our team is very good at clearing waves. Something that you'll hear in about 50% of your games is somebody in your team over voice chat complaining about how good of high ground defense a team has. And that really comes down to heroes that have really good wave clear. The better wave clear your team has, the easier a time you guys will have defending your high ground, pushing out waves really quickly from a distance, all sorts of things. But if you find yourself in a team that has no wave clear, as soon as you fall behind and the enemy starts pushing, you're going to be in a way harder time to hold on to that game and stall for some kind of comeback. Okay, and then the last thing I'm throwing on this list is making sure we have somebody in our team that can hit towers. This is going to be more of a rare occasion that this comes up because pretty much majority of carries are going to be pretty decent at hitting towers, but something like a Slark might not be great early at hitting towers. So if you get an early lead and your whole team can't do anything to push towers, you're not going to be able to get as much out of one team fights as any other team would. And I know it took a while to go over all this stuff, but after you kind of get this in your mind, it's pretty quick to just go down really quick and skim, find something that your team is majorly lacking, and then just kind of try to fill that gap in. This whole video, I've really been focusing on picking around what your teammates pick because I think it is by far the best way to do things. Having a balanced team is kind of the most important thing. I wouldn't sacrifice that for having one hero counter or picking something that's not really countered by the other team. I think it's much more important to make sure that your team as a whole is good. That is going to win you more games over the long run. But if you do have some extra time, the one thing that I would think about based on what the enemy teams have are avoiding picking yourself into some sort of hard counter. I wouldn't worry about picking something that super hard counters the enemy team that ends up with you just picking some niche hero every other game and just kind of always playing out of your comfort zone and playing reactive where you're trying to really get the most out of your counter pick instead of just playing with your team and playing your role in helping your team win. And that's pretty much it. My thought process basically just comes down to picking something you're comfortable with. If you want to add a new hero to your hero pool, play it a bunch, get comfortable with it. Don't just pick random one-off things. And then I would also focus on picking around your team rather than picking around what counters the enemy team. Having a strong group of 5 heroes that all complement each other well is going to get you way farther than picking to just counter an enemy team. If you want to watch any more of my content, I'm going to have a couple more videos out coming up real soon, so make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you want to see any of me actually playing Dota, I'm live most days over at my Twitch stream, where while the game is going on, I kind of give my live commentary on it, explain my thought process and why I'm making decisions that I'm making. So if you want to see any of that, just click the link in the description. It'll take you right there. I'm going to be live most days, so just come hang out. If you think I missed something, have something you want to add, or any questions or clarifications that you want, leave all those thoughts down in the comments. I'm going to be reading through all of those and responding to anything that wants it. All right, and that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching.